I apologize I wasn't here for the bulk of the presentation. Coming from the Orthodox realm, I think, in our experience, we have no way to mandate people coming to continue rabbinic education programs. So the only way they're going to come is if they're interested and they're motivated for themselves, which is usually going to mean either because they're struggling in some area or because they're passionately interested in an area. And you can play off of one another, and there are ways to mix the two. I think a model that I've seen often is you'll take somebody out of the study hall who's very scholarly and knows a lot, and you put him in a community, and suddenly he has to translate that into the life of the everyday man who's not scholarly. And he struggles with that, and he has to learn pastorally how to deal with this person. And suddenly the person and the people that he's dealing with, his community, they're asking him questions which now he has to go back to the study hall and bulk up, because the way he was approaching things as a student is very different than the way he needs to use them now in the real world. And he finds ways to go back to his area of strength and then apply it differently and make it more useful and make it more practical. So there are ways to put it together, but it always has to be drawn on either, unfortunately, either the rabbi's struggling in his position or because they're incredibly passionately motivated to study more.
Right. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And it seems in many cases there's sort of education by necessity, not necessarily among rabbis, but from what I gather, it is driving some of the self-directed learning. It's situations come up. There's a lot of reactive education in response to situations, and it seems. I got that impression from some of this material that you sort of go and you're fed the education, and it might be stimulating and renewing. And that part of it is maybe fairly well covered. And then there's this other reactive piece where it could be done better and maybe integrated better. But it's almost two separate spheres of learning. In terms of addressing those critical needs, it'd be great if it happened more deliberately, kind of as you're describing, to address those actual pressing needs in a sort of orderly and rejuvenating framework, and not just, I gotta know because I've got a meeting coming up in 2 weeks and I'm not ready or something.
One of the things we struggle with, and if you have any insight on this, I'd be fascinated, is a lot of this struggling happens within the real struggling is really probably in the first 5 to 10 years of the rabbi.
Oh yeah.
Then you have a period, I'm talking in general terms, of maybe 10 years where you have somebody who's hit their stride, they know how to surf and surf over the bumps. But then after that, you kind of hit the stage where you're an established rabbi and you're the rabbi that the younger people are looking up to. And that's a stage where you're not struggling enough that you're going to call somebody for help necessarily. And you're also kind of, you've hit your stride and you're, I don't want to say jaded, but how do you get people to continue to want to grow and to be looking for sustenance? And that's a challenge that we've had. I don't want to paint all the senior rabbis with one broad stroke, but to develop a sense of safety in self-introspection, and to want to continue to grow and to think and develop.
Yeah, for sure. Did you have a thought on that, Maury, or
Well, yeah, I have two thoughts. One is that one of the beauties of a group like this, where people are approaching it from different areas, is that you have this conversation of what are the anticipated outcomes. What are we trying to, rather than putting on, which is the logic model, rather than, try this program and see if it attracts people, the discussion should be around what are we trying to give to the rabbis and the congregations. The other piece of that is to develop, especially for congregations who want to know what impact the rabbis studying has on them. So it's to develop the metrics so that you can actually show a congregation, especially the congregation member who isn't involved in the congregation, that it's worth, who approves the rabbi's contract, to say, yeah, look, if, I've been away taking whatever the program is, and I've come back, and over a period of years, we have seen a change in this congregation because of how I myself have changed. And I think those are two thoughts. But I think the purpose of ACRE is to have these conversations, and your article and your discussion is certainly getting us to that point to say, you know, what are we actually trying to achieve by continuing rabbinic education?
Hi, Rebecca. I wanted to address your question. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Ladies and stuff.
Hi, Rebecca Sukiu. One of the things that we found at Direct Rabbis Without Borders at CLAW is that we, and it's interesting that diversity has come up so much in what you said, is we purposely select for a very diverse group. It's a fellowship of 22 rabbis. And we take a diverse group geographically, denominationally, kind of rabbinate, pulpit, non-pulpit, education, chaplaincy, etc., and age. And at first we were actually very concerned about mixing the ages in terms of also numbers of years out, precisely for some of the reasons you said. And it actually wound up being a real strength of the program, because some of the, let's say, older or more mature rabbis, we take people after they've been in the field at least 1 year through wherever. So we have a mix of people who are in their early 30s through their mid-60s, really. And what's been amazing is how the conversations go amongst the different ages and spans of the rabbinate, because the older, sometimes, you know, a younger person who expresses all sorts of fears for something, the older person will say, oh, don't worry, you know, I've been there, and this is what happens, and 9 times out of 10 they're not going to fire you, so don't worry about it, you should try it, right? Jason was in my group last year when somebody made that comment. And then I thought the older rabbis are so inspired by the young energy, it helps bring back that sense of I want to learn, I want to do more, because they get inspired by seeing, you know, the younger people who are just out. And then, you know, when the middle gets mixed in, and people get, you know, so it wound up, we were actually quite nervous about it initially, and it wound up being a real spread to mix the different ages. So I you know,
I think it also speaks to the value of mentoring programs. You alluded to it. I think we've seen it. There was a study Alvin did with Lilly Foundation, I think, about mentoring. And we have a program that we, again, collaborate with HUC about. It's a shared joint commission and shared commitment to have this mentoring program so that every fifth-year student is mentored by a colleague in the field, a veteran colleague in the field, and that mentoring program goes on for 3 years. So that they transition, the mentee has the opportunity to learn from somebody one-on-one in a confidential relationship, so it's safe, as long as they choose to keep it confidential. And it goes on for 2 years into the field. So the mentee has the opportunity to learn from somebody who can help bridge that huge transition from being a student to being a full-time practicing, full job rabbi. And the mentor finds that there's a blessing in the learning that he or she has from the mentee. So it's a really wonderful win-win for everybody. And it's also a critical time.
And the program, you know, when you talk about mentoring programs, I was thinking about mentioning the CCR program. The program is well defined, so it's not saying, you know, hook up with Rabbi so-and-so and, you know, he or she will tell you what to be doing. It's really specific about how you treat each other. It's specific about what questions to be asked and what your goals are in the mentoring. And in some cases, and this happens in all fields, is you hook up with a mentor and he or she not only tells you what you've done good, but also allows you to learn all the bad things that he or she's done. So the program that HUC, and it's online, so you can read it. And hopefully, as we get to sharing best practices, it's I think, an exceptional program. I was supposed to say magnificent, but it is. It's an amazing program for young people and older people to interact. And I'm sure that relationship goes on beyond the
Yes,
program.
and it also teaches the
I'd like to end on the note of magnificent.